here I am in Paraguay. We had rented a house on a cobblestone road in what was considered one of the nicer neighborhoods in a town called Luque, outside of Asuncion, the capital of Paraguay. And, you know, the first day, there's guys on horse-drawn buggies, like hawking bananas, like 3 houses down. They are living like on a dirt floor. It feels like it's 150 degrees every single day. It's so hot.
Oh my goodness.
You know, we're losing electricity every single night. There's brown water coming out of the taps. You can't drink the water. And we go from this paradise in Argentina to, you know, this very difficult third world country. And our stuff still hasn't arrived yet. So we're now in this completely empty house. I have no cell phone. I have no internet. I don't speak Spanish, which is an important piece in this whole story.
Okay.
And my one source of income now has completely dried up. And it was the first time that I really started thinking, oh boy, you know, this could get a little bit difficult.
Welcome to Y'all Street. Today we visit with Tarek Saab, the president and co-founder of Texas Precious Metals and the creator of Y'all Street. So Tarek, you want a cup of coffee?
Love one.
Let's go.
Get the caffeine rolling.
I know I need it. So you obviously are my boss's couple more in their boss. And I've got to learn a little bit about you. You are now creating Y'all Street. You are the co-founder and president of Texas Precious Metals. You were on Trump's Celebrity Apprentice.
Not Celebrity Apprentice.
Oh, Trump's Apprentice.
Apprentice, yeah.
Which made you a celebrity.
Which was before you were born, around the time that you were born?
Yeah, probably about 20 years before I was born. What was that? The 1800s? No? Okay. No, I think it was before I was born, 2002.
Okay, so I filmed in 2005, so you were
Oh,
three.
okay. Yeah, I wasn't quite
really old.
watching Trump at that point. But fascinating life. Lived in Argentina. Where else overseas have you lived?
I lived in Paraguay.
Paraguay.
Yep.
Okay.
Traveled a lot of different places.
So quite the storied backstory. And so, you know, today I just kind of want to give people an opportunity to meet you. They're going to get a chance to see a lot of you over the coming weeks and months, and kind of want to give you just a platform to tell your story, tell people what we have going on at Texas Precious Metals. What is Y'all Street? Why are we doing it? Who are we doing it for? But I would love to kind of just start with you. I mean, from everything I've learned, fascinating human being. Like, pretty crazy, fascinating human being. You know, from starting young, you know, grew up in Massachusetts, not a bunch of money, made a lot of yourself, and, you know, started at Texas Instruments.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we could start there. I mean, grew up in a lower income household in Massachusetts with my dad as an immigrant from Lebanon. My mom is Portuguese, and they worked extremely hard to put me in good schools, and yeah, just had the good fortune of good family, good role models, and my dad was always focused on making sure that if I go to college, that I either need to be, you know, an engineer, a doctor, you know, one of the STEM disciplines.
You gotta make some money.
To be able to make some money and, you know, not
you
work
go.
in the factory kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I got my degree in electrical engineering and in liberal arts. And I would say that I was never really passionate about electrical engineering. That wasn't my thing. But I had the opportunity to have an internship with a company called Analog Devices in Boston, which led me to their competitor, Texas Instruments, and got into this elite program called the TSA program, and was with 25 other engineers from around the country, and it was hyper competitive, and these were the smartest people I'd ever been around. And we spent a year in Dallas. We rotated through various sections of TI, various divisions of TI.
This is when you started at TI, this TSA program?
Yeah, this was the TSA program. And And then after a year in Dallas, they deployed each of us to various sales offices that they have throughout the United States. So the way that they did it, at least at the time, was they would hire these engineers, and some engineers would go into technical sales so they could speak the language and break into new categories, new businesses. You would have field sales engineers who tended to be a little bit more technical, and then you had the engineers that were in the factory. And so I went out into technical sales, and I cut my teeth early in my career in Silicon Valley. So I had the mass market, 4,000 customers. This would have been 2002. We were coming out of the big tech boom and bust. This was right after 9/11. Things were really hard in Silicon Valley. But yeah, worked 80 hours a week and learned how to be a professional, learned the ropes. We were really successful. The group of guys that I worked with, I'm still friends to this day. They've gone off to start, VC firms and get MBAs and start companies. It was, just a really great group of guys. And so I did that for a couple years, and then I got promoted to be a worldwide marketing manager. So they relocated me back to Dallas, and this was a period of my life where I was able to travel all over the world. So
you're 24, 25-ish?
Yeah, I guess I'm about 24 at the time.
Okay.
Which was just really wild. I mean, I described that period of my life kind of like being a boy in a business suit.
Hey, that's how I feel right now.
Yeah,
so we're getting through it.
You're caught in that vortex between still experience a bit of a delayed adolescence, but thrust into work situations that are, very meaningful and impactful, and could be multi-million-dollar deals that you're working on. And so by day, you're putting on, the starched button-down shirt. By night, you're playing video games or going to the bars or doing whatever you're doing, when you're 24. So it was, we always sort of described it as like the quarter-life crisis, this struggle, between, that transition between boyhood and manhood. And I would say that actually this period of my life when I took the position as a worldwide marketing manager, I ended up spending about half of the year overseas. So we had an office in Europe, in Freising, Germany. We had an office in Osaka, an office in Tokyo. And I was literally over there probably, 50% of the time. And when I was over there, I was alone for about 50% of the year.
Wow.
So here I am, I'm on these 14-hour flights, and the technology on the planes wasn't great back then. There was no Wi-Fi. I'm reading books. I'm in foreign countries where I don't speak the language. Just taking a lot of downtime, a lot of alone time to kind of figure things out in my life. And from an experience standpoint, to be in Japan, to do deals in Japan with Samsung, or Samsung was in Korea, but with Mitsubishi and with all of the high tech, electronic companies, we would spend time there. We'd go to South Korea. We were in China. We were in Taiwan. We had a big team there. And in Freising, we also had a big team in Milan in northern Italy. I was working on semiconductor chips that controlled LED, large form factor video displays, but also this was the onset of using LEDs for backlighting televisions. So we went from those cathode ray tubes, those gigantic TVs, into these like really thin monitors.
Those big boxes.
Yeah, big boxes down to small
I
boxes.
remember them very slightly from when I was little. So what was your specific role in that point? I mean, you're saying you're going alone. Are you the closer? Are you the technical guy explaining, all the ins and outs? I mean, what got you successful in that role? What specifically was your role in that?
So in product marketing, your job is to not only help promote the products that you've created and to work very high-level deals with large organizations, but it's also to listen and to gather feedback on the technologies that are coming and the type of engineering that we needed to create to support those technologies. So my job was really being a liaison between these large customers who are doing huge volumes with us and the factory who is creating this roadmap of new products that are coming down the pike. And the learning curve of being thrust into these situations and these different cultures and these different environments, and hosting dinners and understanding all of the nuances of sitting at a table in Japan and how to hand a business card to somebody and to adapt to these different, cultural milieus, I think was really eye-opening for a young kid from the projects in New Bedford, Massachusetts. So it was an important part of my life, and it's ultimately kind of what led me to The Apprentice.
Yeah. So, you talked a little bit about being young and all this learning. I am about as fresh fish out of college as you can get. Have had amazing opportunities here so far, but completely understand. I mean, it's a different world, went to the University of Texas, and they did an amazing job preparing us, but there's some things you get in and you don't realize. I mean, what to pack when you travel has been difficult for me. Everything. So I can only imagine how much, even more, coming from where you came from to such a large company like TI and then going all over the world.
Everybody's journey is a little different, and I think the transition out of college was especially tough for some because you spend the first 22 years of your life largely being taken care of. Even when you're in college,
Yeah, absolutely.
You have, your food, the cafeteria is there for you. You're not necessarily, making your own meals or in some cases doing your own laundry. And then you get out into the working world and you're by yourself and you have bills for the first time. You might have a car for the first time. I'd never owned a car until I graduated from college.
Wow.
Never had a cell phone until I graduated from college. Never really did very much banking. I had like a simple checking account, but the idea of setting up 401ks and just all of the life skills required to survive as a young man.
Yeah.
Some of us just aren't necessarily really prepared for. So you're weaving that into learning how to be a professional and going into the workforce. And for the first time, for many of us, working with people that are multi-generational, working with guys who are in their 70s and 60s and 50s and having to connect and adapt. And then you're weaving in new cultures into it. So I talk a lot about the importance of communication and the ability to communicate well and to connect with people. And, it's really a life skill that I think is one of the most underappreciated.
So TI sounds pretty amazing, though. You're working on brand new technology all over the world. You have a job that so many people would love. Why leave? Why go to The Apprentice? Why change up if you had something going for you? What was that experience like?
Yeah, well, I won't say that it was necessarily intentional. So I'll talk about how the Apprentice came to be. But for all of the benefits of TI, we internally used to joke that TI stood for Training Institute, and that's ultimately what it was. The 5 years I was at TI, I got the best professional education I could have possibly hoped for. I had great mentorship. We took a lot of training and classes, and was thrust into situations that would help me develop over my career. Decades into the future. What The Apprentice would do, the producers of The Apprentice, Mark Burnett Productions, they would go around to Fortune 500 companies, all over the U.S. They would hold these open casting calls, and they partnered with TI, and they said, hey, can we come in, hold an open casting call, and have your employees come and interview for The Apprentice? And TI was all about it because it would create, a lot of positive publicity if one of the employees of TI got on the show. I had never seen the show. I didn't even own a television. As I mentioned before, I was overseas all the time.
Technology.
Yeah,
you nothing. Barely use his phone now. You've come a long way.
Exactly.
You really have.
So my buddy, came to me. He's like, "Hey, let's throw on the suits and let's go try out for The Apprentice." And I'm like, "I don't even know what The Apprentice is." And so they bring us into this room, and there are 10 employees. They're just lines out the door, right, for this open casting call. And they bring 10 employees in, and they're creating these debates, and trying to see how people react in group environments and how well they can take a position and argue that position. And at the end of this, maybe 30-minute group interview session, they go around the room and they say, well, if there's one person in this room besides you that you think should be on The Apprentice, who should it be? The other 9 people pointed to me. So then they send me to round 2, where I have a one-on-one interview with a producer. And then from there, they say you have to go and make this at-home video, which nowadays people make at-home videos all day, every day with their phone. At the time, I had to track down a kid in college who had a camera and
weird.
Could edit. So we make this at-home video. I don't hear anything for 8 months. I don't think much of it. I just go about my business, traveling all over. And then I get a call in August of 2015, hey, you're one of the final 50. Wow. So they then fly me to LA. We're sequestered for a week. They do medical testing, IQ testing, psychological testing. We go through this whole round of interview after interview after interview after interview. It was just like totally exhausting. You couldn't talk to any of the other people that were one of the final 50. From there, I'm skipping over a lot, but from there, I get pulled in on the very last day. All the producers are in the room, clap their hands. Congratulations, you're on The Apprentice, season 5. You need to be in New York in 3 weeks. And in the midst of all of this, what I come to find out is we actually can't tell anybody that I'm going to be on The Apprentice. So at the time, this is like the apex of broadcast media. Everybody's watching shows. There was a time before you were born where you would like schedule your week around like what shows or what programs are going to be on like Thursday night or Friday night.
You can't just like pull it up on Netflix on demand at any and all times of the day.
It was a different era. Let's just say that.
I believe it. I do remember a little bit watching like Disney Channel when I was little, and you had to watch it at the specific time because it wasn't coming back on.
Yeah, and this is all pre-social media. This is pre-YouTube. This is like Google has barely been around for maybe like 4 years. This is 2005.
2005, and you're 26, 27.
Yeah,
maybe?
I was 26 when I started the filming.
Okay.
And The Apprentice was a phenomenon. I mean, this was like a massive show, right?
Yeah.
And this was like part of the huge comeback of Trump. I mean, The Apprentice is actually ultimately what helped launch Trump on his political career.
Absolutely.
So we go. So we have to like sign all these non-disclosure agreements. At Texas Instruments, there were only like 3 or 4 people that knew that I was even going on the show. And even in my life, like I think my mom had to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Wow.
My future wife, Kate, had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. But nobody really knew where I was. So a lot of people at TI actually thought I was away on medical leave, thought that I had like leukemia or something.
Oh my gosh.
And my friends and family just assumed that I was on a business trip in China or wherever, because that wasn't particularly uncommon.
How long was the filming?
It was 49 days.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so
gracious.
it was, we started the filming September 24th. We ended it November 11th. And like all of the episodes were filmed one right after the other. And like I said, I had never seen the show. So I'm going on the show. I'm thinking that it's...
You didn't watch it before? You didn't find a way to see it at all?
I had seen a couple of clips and I had a vague idea of what the show was about. And, even when I got selected for the show, I'm thinking in my head, is this even something that I want? Like, do I want to be on national television? Like, all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, I'm going to have all this spotlight on me. And, so I go in, I think it's a job interview. And like I've done, throughout my career, I'm like type A kind of guy. I'm like, let me take charge. Let's go.
I don't know if you know this. I don't think that you do. But when I heard that you were on The Apprentice, I did go find it, and I watched probably the first half of the season.
Oh, that's scary.
And there's a lot of Tarek that is true. You have a very man in the arena kind of mindset, right? Like I would rather go out swinging, right? The respect belongs to the man in the arena rather than the guy who sits outside and watches the gladiators fight.
That's a good point, though, right?
Right, totally,
Because
absolutely.
when I got on the show, I was thinking, I want to put my best foot forward. But originally, I was thinking, well, not the first task. Like, let me just figure out what the first task is about. So, very first episode, Trump lands on the tarmac on his, in his jumbo jet.
Yeah.
Walks down the steps, and he says, I'm going to do something unconventional this season. I'm going to pick the first two.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I have a great respect for Mensa because Tarek has an IQ that's higher than anybody here other than myself. So I'm going to ask Tarek to step forward. He's going to be one of your project managers.
Candidates, or the first two project managers. And Tarek, you're going to be the first project manager.
Because you were like, I have a very high IQ, right? Right.
Well, that whole deal. So it became kind of a running meme.
Yeah.
That Trump was obsessed about the fact that I'm in Mensa. None of my family knew that. My friends didn't know that until they watched the show, and the producers were harping on it over and over and over again because they wanted the whole purpose of the producers to create a storyline.
Yeah.
And the fact that they could pull something from me that was unique and turn that into
your whole personality, right? That's the goal. And I can attest to that is in no way, shape, or form. Your whole personality is absolutely not a look at me kind of person at all.
And I will tell you, as we kind of fast forward down the road in the story, what was the hardest thing for me is, again, rewind the tape. It's pre-social media. So when you left high school or you left college, you had no connection hardly at all with any of your friends anymore. That, you would get together, you would go home and you'd say, hey, how's Billy doing? What's Johnny up to these days? Oh, I heard this, or this one's gonna do this. It was all kind of word of mouth. We had email, so we'd catch up a little bit via email, but it wasn't like you had Facebook or Instagram stories where you're constantly monitoring every single thing that your buddy's doing.
Yeah.
So it was hard because I had friends that, or people I had gone to school with that hadn't seen me in 20 years, that were now seeing a version of me on national television that was this curated, produced version of who I had become that wasn't really the true me, right?
Yeah.
I often say if I have a camera on you for 24 hours, I can go into the editing room and I can make you look like a saint or I can make you look like a killer.
Yeah, let's not do the camera for 24 hours.
Yeah, so that's essentially what it's like. It's not scripted. Everything was unscripted, but the way that they would produce the shows is they would find out who Trump was going to fire, and they would wait, and then the producers would then go back and create story arcs to make it kind of make sense that this particular person was fired. So going back to that first episode, I get selected. I don't know what the heck I'm doing, and there are all of these production challenges associated with these tasks because you can't split up into more than two groups because there's only two camera crews, and then you'll be in the middle of a task and you got to get pulled out to do these side interviews. What's the narration of reality TV. So what's happening now, and what do you think about this person, and da 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 da. So it was really kind of crazy because this first episode, it's Sam's Club, and they're like, okay, Tarek, you got to get as many business memberships as you can in 24 hours, and you have these people, and we're going to give you a blimp that you can run in the air, and you can do whatever you want with the blimp, but you got to have two people in the blimp, and you have a budget of like $500, and go. And they create these scenarios where it's impossible to do a task without something failing or something going wrong because it's kind of set up for drama. And so, this is not long after 9/11. And so I tell the guys in the blimp, I'm like, just fly it as low as you possibly can, which I think is like 1,000 feet, right? And just circle the Sam's Club. And of course, all the neighbors are like calling the cops. They think there's like another terrorist attack. The cops show up. We have the paparazzi out there because they think that the Apprentice is being filmed, and like all of this kind of craziness was happening. We end up losing the first task 43-40, which according to Trump means I'm the dumbest guy in the world.
That means that people voted, right?
No, 43-40 just meant how many business memberships we were able to capture
in that
24 hours. So we lost 43-40. I almost get fired. Like I'm literally episode 1, The Apprentice. I am like 5 seconds away from getting fired. And the other girl that's in the final boardroom with me, she's like, well, Trump, I need to defend Tarek here. And Trump's like, you're so dumb. And so he ends up firing her. I almost get fired 3 out of the first 5 weeks. And then you talk about like man in the arena. I figured out, I'm like, man, this is kind of a game show. Like I am not playing this right. So the next few episodes, I'm just like laying low. I'm like, who do you need to sweep the floors?
Tarek, these people are laughing at you. I mean, I'm starting to laugh.
You know what? Let me just say something really quick.
Why should you interrupt me when I'm knocking him out?
Because we didn't.
I know, but by interrupting me when I'm knocking him, what are you doing to yourself?
Because I'm being truthful, and I'll always be truthful.
How stupid is that, right?
It's not stupid.
Here I am. I'm getting ready to almost fire this guy for being a horrible leader. And you interrupt me.
If I stay, I want to stay on the truth.
And you were no great shakes yourself.
Summer, just like
you did
that.
a lousy job.
Sorry.
Here I am. I'm getting ready practically to fire this guy. And you keep interrupting me and stopping me from doing it. And in the end, what Carolyn said to you is true.
I want him to be
She
fired.
said, what have you done? And you couldn't answer it. You know what, Summer? You're fired.
I found that so interesting, just from people have this perception of Trump, right? And you have this perception of him as, go, go, go all the time. And I found myself watching the season and I was like, he actually tried or she actually tried. And this person and that person, sat and twiddled their thumbs all episode and they're safe and this guy's getting fired.
That's it.
Yeah, you're gonna mess up. If you took that approach with me, in my young career, I'll be out of here in a couple weeks.
I will tell you, you would have had the personality that would have put you on the chopping block, right? It's just the way
100%.
it's the way that it is,
100%.
And when you're type A, look, I don't know this with certainty. This is my speculation, but when we were in California and we were doing the final 50 as they're selecting who's going to be on the show. It's really a sociology experiment. We're doing like the Myers-Briggs and all the psychological testing. So they know that they're putting this type A guy with this, phlegmatic.
They're mixing and matching. They got some psychologists working.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're mixing oil and water together, and you know that it's not going to mix, and you know that people are going to get frustrated. And the type A guys are going to get frustrated with the surfers that are on the show.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was designed for volatility. But I ended up, once I kind of figured it out, I ended up lasting until episode 10. I was the 12th person fired, and then I came back and was selected by the guy who won my season to help him on the final task, which is the final 2 episodes. So, at the end of the whole experience, I ended up having more airtime than anybody. I had this character arc where I was a villain for a while, then I kind of had this redemption story at the end.
Tarek, the women love you for some reason. He's a member of Mensa, but sometimes, I don't know about that IQ thing, but you're pretty smart, Tarek, okay? So what did you think of Sean?
And, it was an experience I say I would do again the first time. I wouldn't do it again a second time.
Yeah.
But I came off of the show and it's like, well, here I am. It goes back to the TI stuff. I'd been with TI for 5 years, and as great as TI was, I always felt boxed in by the large monolithic corporation where you have these great opportunities for mentorship and learning, but you don't have the latitude and the breadth for creativity. And so I had often been thinking about, okay, well, what's the next step in my career? So when we finished filming in November, the show didn't air until February. So we had some time there to kind of go back to TI and just sort of do the natural routine. But I realized that this juggernaut of a show was going to help me if I wanted to launch a business.
Publicity, right?
Yeah. So I said, well, let me scramble together a business and try to get this business launched at the same time that the show is out, because I'm going to have all this free marketing that comes from the show. So the show comes out in 2006, and I launched a company with my best friend called Lionheart Apparel. And the concept behind it was just it was a Christian clothing line, and it was just Christian symbols on T-shirts and hats, and it was a very like subtle, kind of understated. At the time, if there was any Christian clothing, it was like really cheesy stuff, and we just wanted something that was like a little bit cooler, and it worked well. I mean, we launched Lionheart Apparel, and we were selling in a lot of different stores, and we were doing the e-com thing, going direct to consumer, and it was really rolling, and the echo effect of The Apprentice, coming off of The Apprentice in 06, I was in tabloid magazines and Us Weekly and TV Guide, and I was famous basically for
one
like
of the
6
bigger
months.
stars of this season,
Yeah,
too, right?
And it was one of those where you always wonder, like, oh, what's it like being Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt or some famous athlete where you're walking out into a restaurant, and that's what it was for me. Like I'd go into a restaurant and you're signing autographs and you're taking pictures, and then of course that fades over time because if you're not consistently in the public eye, then the star power wanes, as it were. But it was great timing to launch this Lionheart Apparel, and I was traveling around the country, and I was speaking, and I wrote a book, and things were going really well until the Great Financial Crisis. So Great Financial Crisis hits in 2008, and everybody loses their shirts, right? And the real estate market is horrible. I mean, and people were losing their jobs. There was concerns about the currency. The country itself was trying to sustain and withstand this terrible economic effects of the Big Short, right?
Yeah, that was one of the first one of the first like major memories other than going to Disney World when I was little. But I was 6, and I remember it. Like I remember my parents talking about finances, and I remember my dad talking to his friends after like my baseball practices or whatever. And I don't think that it's something that I ever realized until looking back just how serious the Great Financial Crisis was. I mean, I always thought of it people are having a rough time, but it wasn't until I got into high school and I started studying it. I started studying kind of financial history a little bit, that it shocked me.
Great Financial Crisis was a big wake-up call for a lot of people. And for me, growing up in a lower-income household, doing engineering and liberal arts, I had no finance background at all. Even when I was working at TI, I wasn't.
Still didn't?
No, I wasn't involved with the balance sheet of our vertical. I had to submit like expense reports, but that's about it. And so here I am. I'm coming off of The Apprentice. I have this company. I'm learning a lot about what it means to start a company. Everything from how do I create an LLC, and how do I build a financial statement, and how much inventory should I have, and you're taking small business loans and interest and all these kind of things. It's like it really was an educational process just to understand what it means to start a business. And and then so when the Great Financial Crisis hit, it made me start asking some very rudimentary questions that I had never really thought about. It's like, why does the paper dollar have value?
That's a good one.
It's a piece of paper. Why does it have value? And, can it be exchanged for, precious metals, or like, how is it created?
So tell me this, your team name, because you were the first team captain in The Apprentice, was Gold Rush. Did you have some kind of, because you didn't start a precious metals company after The Apprentice, started an apparel company. Was that coincidence, or did you have a little love? Did you have a little love in there?
It's total coincidence. What's funny,
wow,
I've had these moments in my life where, almost like little foreshadowings. So growing up, in elementary school, we would have these art projects, and we would have to learn about the 50 states, for example, and everybody would get assigned a state. And of course, the state I was assigned was Texas. And so I had to learn everything about Texas and the Blue Bond. I still have some of these in my attic or whatever. And then I played Little League Baseball, and the baseball team I'm assigned to is the Texas Rangers.
Let's go.
So, and then I get this this job out of college. It's Texas Instruments. It's like, it was almost like this foreshadowing that I needed to be in Texas.
Something's pushing you over to the greatest state.
Yeah,
You know
right.
it? Yeah.
Exactly. And the same thing happened with Gold Rush. It was weird. Like, I think that the origin of that name was the show was launching during the 2006 Winter Olympics.
Okay.
So we have to select a team name, and I'm thinking, well, we're going to go for the gold, right? It's Gold Rush. And what was funny about that is after the show, we created a website, and at the time, Flash-based websites were all the rage. So there's like all.
I don't
this
know what that
movement.
is, honestly.
Yeah,
I have no clue.
Terrible for SEO, but so we had this Flash-based website, and I'm sitting there, and it was the coolest website where, I had this briefcase, and the briefcase would open. It was just gold bars all in the briefcase. But I had no exposure to gold. I knew nothing about gold. It was just like these little unique foreshadowings. And so I go down this journey, and I'm now working from home because I'm starting this company, and I'm just starting to read. And I'm reading like G. Edward Griffin's A Creature from Jekyll Island, and reading History of Finance in America, and started reading about Warren Buffett, and start learning about economics in a very kind of like a homeschooler in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And so I start getting interested in precious metals, and I start buying precious metals, and I'm going through this experience, and it's really difficult, actually, right? This is early stage precious metals. So the whole economy of the United States transitions from being brick and mortar to e-com in the late 90s. And so by the time you get to the mid 2000s, people are already buying a lot of stuff online.
But I'm not buying gold online in 2009. I mean, I might be nervous buying some Hanes T-shirts. What if that gets to me or not? I mean, that's a different level. I mean, I feel like even today we're just starting to get to that threshold of people saying, okay, a very normal, reputable company could buy me gold or, anything online.
You would be shocked. Even
in 2009, people would buy it?
Yeah, 2008, 2009. And at the
Wow.
time, the biggest constraint was, how do you ship this stuff in an insured way? So really there was only one method. It was the U.S. Postal Service registered mail. It was slow, it was untrackable, and there was an insurance limit of $25,000. And I remember my first transaction in 2008, I'm writing a check, I'm mailing a check to this company in Washington. There were delays on buying metals because it's the great financial crisis. A lot of people were buying metals. I waited 6 months for the product. It comes registered mail. I couldn't track it. Your fingers are crossed the whole time. And I realized, I'm like, wow, this is like very archaic. This is an industry that has not really caught up, not figured out the infrastructure to be an e-commerce business. Just kind of filed that away. Didn't take any action on it. And there are those few kind of sliding doors moments in your life, and this then becomes one of those sliding doors moments where I meet this German guy that I befriend, and I start talking to him, and I say, "What do you do for a living?" He's like, "I'm an investor." And I said, "Okay, well, what do you invest in?" He's like, "Precious metals."
Are you living in the United States at this point?
I'm in Texas. Yeah.
Okay.
So I had for context, I had lived in Dallas, then went to Silicon Valley, then moved back to Dallas. I ended up meeting my wife, who's from Fort Worth, and we're just living in Texas. Okay, so this is 2008, and so I meet this German guy, get to know him really well. Brilliant investor, big into precious metals, has a lot of precious metals, but he's going to relocate his entire family to Paraguay. And it's like, well, why are you going to Paraguay? He loved the demographics of Paraguay. He thought Paraguay was about to experience a huge economic boom. He loved forestation, and Paraguayan forestation was becoming a bigger and bigger part of their economy.
Wow.
And they have a huge German population in Paraguay.
So he felt at home a little bit.
Yeah, he felt at home.
Yeah,
and come to
there you
find out, he was right about all of those things. Paraguay
Right.
has had this huge boom and big in forestation, all that kind of stuff. But he had a lot of precious metals, and he was trying to sell them, but the bids that he was getting were terrible. And so he said, "Can you help me sell some of this stuff?" Now, my clothing company was kind of on the decline, and I was looking for like the next phase of my career. And I said, sure. So I whip up a $12 GoDaddy website. Okay. Don't know how to make websites, but just like $12. Send out a press release. Trump alum fired up about gold and silver now. Gets picked up everywhere. We sell out of all of his, he had millions of metal, but sell out all of his metal in like 24 hours. And I was like, wow, I guess I'm in the metals business.
Wow.
And now I just needed to figure out how to get more of it.
Yeah.
And so I start, reaching out to mints, finding other private dealers. And it was very crude. In the business at the time, I wasn't even really a dealer. I was kind of like the eBay of precious metals. I was matching up buyers and sellers and kind of taking a cut. That eventually morphed into really developing like a gold brokering company. And a gold broker is somebody that doesn't actually have the metal in inventory. They're just, facilitating the transaction. And I was, taking money and drop shipping it from, a distributor or another dealer that had the metal. And I started thinking, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like I can build a career off of this. And at the time, everything was done on Skype. And I realized I could live anywhere in the world. The U.S. was going through this financial crisis. Obama had just been elected, which I wasn't thrilled about. And I now have this company that I can do from pretty much anywhere in the world. And this investor friend of mine, he was going to Paraguay. I'm like, why don't I go to South America too? I loved traveling, and
Had you been before to South
I had
America?
never been to South America. I'd been everywhere in the northern hemisphere, but never to South America. And I said, let's go on this adventure. So this was a period in my life where I was on The Apprentice. I left my career at TI. I get married. I start my own company. I sold one house. I bought another house.
A little bit of change.
A
little bit of change
is happening all at the same
bit.
time. And then I basically, say to my wife, why don't we just pick up and move to South America?
And what did she say to that? She was all on board?
Yeah, I think we were still in the honeymoon phase.
Yeah,
so those
she still
are
loved-
easier conversations to have.
She was like, absolutely.
She's like, wherever you go.
Oh, yeah, there you
I will
go.
follow. No, she actually factors into the story in terms of just, I think, lessons, because having that stable support system and that rock during the highs and lows is just incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I've had the chance to meet her. I mean, super sweet. I mean, so kind, so hospitable. And I mean, just being able to see how she has helped you and kind of given you a platform in order to work as hard as you do, to travel as much as you do, to have the success that you've had. I mean, I think is a testament. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, of all the decisions that you make in your entire life, the person that you choose to marry is hands down the most important decision. It's the biggest life decision, and I've been so fortunate in that. And yeah, so I went to Kate and I said, let's pick up and move to Paraguay. I can run the precious metals business from down there. We'll learn about all the business opportunities that exist in Paraguay, and we'll do that. So we put all of our stuff onto a container, and the container was going to take a lot longer to get to Paraguay than we were hoping. So instead of going directly to Paraguay without our stuff, I said, why don't we go on an adventure to Argentina? And at the time I said, well, maybe we'll go to Tierra del Fuego, the southernmost city in the world. And my wife was like, I don't know, I want to go that close to Antarctica. So we picked a town called Bariloche. And Bariloche is well known to people in South America, not as well known to people in North America, but it's one of the most beautiful towns in the world. And it's a population of about 100,000 people. It's a big tourist destination. It's like the Aspen of South America. You have skiing, you have glacial lakes, mountains, hiking, rainbows, butterflies. It's the chocolate capital of South America. It's
there you go.
The microbrewery capital of South America.
Hey,
It was great.
2 for 2. That's awesome.
So we go down there. We take this adventure. We have my oldest daughter was I think 8 months old at the time, and here we are. The first night that we get into Bariloche, we rented this cabin. We open up the next morning. We open up the shutters. We see this huge rainbow going across the mountains, and you just think that
This is the place
you're in the
for
Garden
me.
of Eden, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, there you go.
So we're there for 2.5 months. I'm working on the gold company. Things are going really well, and the time has come for us to move to Paraguay. So we pack everything up. We go to Paraguay. And just as we're getting into Paraguay in mid-2009, things in the U.S. start tapering a little bit economically, and the demand for precious metals now completely falls off a cliff. So
Wow.
here I am in Paraguay. We had rented a house on a cobblestone road in what was considered one of the nicer neighborhoods in a town called Luque, outside of Asuncion, the capital of Paraguay. And, you know, the first day, there's guys on horse-drawn buggies, like hawking bananas, like 3 houses down. They are living like on a dirt floor. It feels like it's 150 degrees every single day. It's so hot.
Oh my goodness.
You know, we're losing electricity every single night. There's brown water coming out of the taps. You can't drink the water. And we go from this paradise in Argentina to, you know, this very difficult third world country. And our stuff still hasn't arrived yet. So we're now in this completely empty house. I have no cell phone. I have no internet. I don't speak Spanish, which is an important piece in this whole story.
Okay.
And my like one source of income now has completely dried up. And it was the first time that I really started thinking, oh boy, you know, this could get a little bit difficult
When
here.
you have one kid at that,
I have one child at the time.
and you have a wife that you just brought down to South America, and she was happily like, let's go. And now
Married a guy on The Apprentice.
Yeah,
You know,
right. I'm
and
cool.
and now we're living in Paraguay with guys hawking bananas and
and the floor kind of starts coming out from under you. And I mean, I can only imagine the amount of stress.
tons of stress. You know, I had a little bit of money when I went down there, but I had student loans, and it costs money to travel, and we're renting these places. And when you go rent a house in Paraguay, you're going to pay for the whole entire year. And
Yeah.
and now money is drying up, and it's drying up, and it's drying up, and you're trying to get settled and get your paperwork and residency, and the money's drying up, and it's drying up, and now the money isn't coming in anymore. And I have this moment where I woke up in this empty house with no belongings, and I had grabbed like a cardboard box from this grocery store, Los Jardines, and my laptop is sitting on this cardboard box, and I'm in like this like makeshift fold-out chair, doing what I can to see if I can drum up any metals business. And I had just gotten, at the time, I had just gotten Wi-Fi, and the thought occurred to me that the average worker in Paraguay makes $2,000 per year.
Wow.
And I don't speak the language. And if this doesn't work out, like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I started thinking, man, I'm like, I have 2 college degrees. I work for a major Fortune 500 company. I was on The Apprentice. I started a company. But when you distill all of that activity down to this cardboard box, I realized I really don't have any skills. Like, what skills do I actually have? I can't speak a foreign language. I don't know how to run an excavator. I'm not a plumber.
Yeah.
The only real skill that I had ever had was I was a good communicator, and that's been ripped away from me because I don't even speak the language.
Wow.
What am I going to do? And I open up my bank account, and I have $14 in my bank account.
I remember those days. I just got out of college.
And I'm in Paraguay on a cardboard box.
Yeah.
And it's like I have this like real panic that I'm feeling. And then I go into the other room, and my wife's like, "I'm pregnant."
Oh
And
my
I'm just
gosh.
like, "Oh my
And you have,
gosh, what have I done?
I can only imagine
What have I
like
done?"
all of the different emotions, because of course you're happy that you're being blessed with a child, but the stress and
The stress.
oh my gosh,
The stress.
I
And
cannot imagine. $14 in the bank account.
the idea of going back to the United States was just not on the table. Like, just
Why
the
not?
work and the cost, and even if I called up my friends and family and borrowed money to try to get all of our stuff, but all of our belongings were still in transit to Paraguay. So it was just like, what am I going to do? And I think I look back on that moment and I see that as one of my greatest professional achievements was to work out of that hole. And the way that I did it is, my brother-in-law at the time had a small marketing company and he was building websites. And he said, look, man, if you can learn how to build websites, then, I can fish you some work, especially the websites that are lower end that I don't want to mess with. And so at the time, there was Joomla and there was WordPress, and I start researching and learning how to do HTML. And little did I realize how important that would later become, because Texas Precious Metals is a technology company.
Yeah.
And to learn the inner workings of how all of these sites work and APIs and cron jobs and all the connectivity necessary to kind of build these websites, so I started doing that, and I started doing copywriting for M&A companies, and taking on any odd job that I could. And to go from the absolute highs of The Apprentice to now I'm like this contract laborer in Paraguay was really humbling. I think, as a man of faith, it brought me so close to God, my relationship with God, and this reliance on him and this sense of detachment from the world. We had no stuff, we had no money, and it was an important time for me to really understand who I was and who I wanted to be as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a businessman. And I really embraced it. It was almost like a cold plunge. It's like, get in the cold plunge, own it. We're going to go through this, period of difficulty, and we're going to come out better. And it was, I have, anybody who knows me knows that I'm an optimist, a world-class optimist. So it's always, we'll figure it out. We'll make it happen. We'll do it. So eventually, I start getting a little bit of money coming in, and, we're able to buy the groceries.
And this is from really more of the website stuff, or are we still
it's
trading
mostly,
gold and silver where we can?
I was still trading where we could, but it was the market had dried up. I didn't, not many people knew who I was. So that was just like fits and starts, little bits here and there. But the consistent income was coming with all of this contract work, and I started building my own websites and tried to create as many income streams as I could. And finally, all of our belongings arrive. And we kind of set up the house, and we're getting somewhat settled. But I determined that Paraguay is not the right long-term location for me. I really wanted to get back to Bariloche, and it was a struggle. And we knew that the baby was coming, and getting residency in Argentina was harder than in Paraguay. And so I thought, well, let's just have the baby in Argentina. And they have birthright citizenship there, and then we would be permanent residents, and we can really start our journey from there. And so that's what we did, but we didn't have the money. So my wife had met these Baptist missionaries in Paraguay and befriended the wife of a minister, and they were talking, and Kate just said, look, we have all this furniture and all this stuff, and it was not going to be possible to bring it all down to Argentina. We're going to pack, as much as we can fit into like a Hyundai H2. Yeah. And anything that doesn't fit in there, we have to sell. That's couches. Think about a wedding registry, with the Cuisinart mixers and the, all the kitchen, all the kitchen stuff and the knickknacks. Yeah. And these Baptist missionaries were like, oh, wow, you have all of this like brand new stuff from the States. Like, we'll buy it. And that was amazing for me. It was a blessing, because like, what kind of garage sale are you going to have on a cobblestone road in Paraguay where the whole population makes like $2,000 a year? Like, what are you going to get in return for it? So we actually got probably, 50 cents on the dollar, which was just enough money to get us to Argentina. We have the baby, my son, my second child, which that story is a whole nother story because the midwife didn't show up.
Oh no!
So
Did you deliver it?
yeah, me
You
and
delivered him?
two doulas, two little Argentine girls who were there to help, massage my wife.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, so it was Wild West.
I did not know that.
Wild
Wow.
West. So, so I get there, and through this process of building websites, I connect with some other guys who are in precious metals, and I start working with this gentleman out of Ohio on his precious metals company website, and then we develop together a website called Gold Shark, which factors into the TPM journey later down the road. So Gold Shark was just an aggregator of all of the different precious metals websites and would price compare different coins and take in all of that data and information. And so I was doing that. I was doing some consulting work for a franchise of like Mexican restaurants in South America. I was doing copywriting. I was doing anything that I could to kind of build this business. So I end up renting an office in downtown Bariloche. I meet these expats, these engineers who were sent from the States, and then they end up, meeting an Argentine girlfriend, staying down in Argentina, and they're working on the websites, and we start actually building a little bit of like a marketing and web development agency. For 3 years, I had no car. I finally could afford to buy a car, and like things.
We're getting going.
Yeah,
We're getting going.
We're seeing the progress, and then the Pujehue volcano erupts in Chile, and it dumps, in some places, 8 to 12 inches of ash on Bariloche. So I have my little, this is a whole nother story, but I have my daughter with me. I'm walking down the road with a friend of mine, and all of a sudden, the sky turns black, and it's apocalyptic. And then it's just like lightning everywhere, and you're thinking, oh my God, this feels like the end of the world.
Yeah.
Come to find out, this volcano erupts, and there is just ash pouring down like snow. It's like being in a Massachusetts blizzard, but instead of the snow melting when it hits you, it's just like all pumice that's falling down on you. You're like covering your mouth and your eyes, and it shuts down the whole tourism industry. You can't get flights in and out of Bariloche. So there end up being a lot of my buddies who are now out of work, and so I hire them, and they're doing little things for me. And it was at this time, again, it's sort of a sliding doors moment where when right before I left the United States, I had gone to like a housewarming party, and I had met a guy, and the guy asked, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" And I said, "Oh, I'm in the precious metals business. I've been in the metal
You're a
business
gold
for like
merchant, international gold merchant.
international gold merchant for 2 weeks, right? I had been doing it for 2 weeks, and so I left my name and never talked to the guy again. 2 years later, I get contacted by this guy, Jason Casper. And he's like, yeah, I had reached out to a bunch of my friends to see if anybody knew anybody in the gold business because my grandfather was buying gold, and I think he was paying too much money for the gold. So I end up meeting Jason Casper. And this is like the big fork in the road in my career. And Jason's 28 at the time. He's just a complete finance geek, Buffett aficionado. He's the kind of kid that was like calling his stockbroker at 13 from high school, placing trades.
100%. Absolutely. I bet he did pretty well too.
Yeah, he did do well, actually. I know for a fact he did well. And we end up hitting it off with this like Skype relationship, just talking business and talking finance and talking what's happening in the economy, and we're very aligned on so many things. And Jason at the time had a hedge fund, and he wanted to roll that into a new hedge fund he was building called ARC Fund, which was going to have some gold in the hedge fund, but he wanted to have it in physical. He didn't want to have it in synthetic and like GLD.
Smart guy.
Right, yeah. Exactly. So I said, I can help you with this. So we start the hedge fund together, and I tell him that on the physical side, Jason and I end up having this discussion about how do we take gold, which has a negative carry cost. So you buy it, it's a shiny rock, and you got to insure it, you got to store it, has a negative carry cost, month in and month out. Is there a way that we can earn a dividend on that physical gold position? And we came to the conclusion, like, why don't we just start a precious metals company, tuck it into this hedge fund, use the physical metal. Instead of being a broker, we can be a dealer, sell the gold and rebuy it.
Explain the difference on that for people.
Yeah, so just a broker is somebody that doesn't actually have the metal. They're conducting the transaction, but they're typically buying it from somewhere else.
They're
drop
sourcing
shipping
it. Yeah.
Yeah, a dealer actually owns metal and is dealing out the metal.
From their own inventory.
I don't know if those are like official definitions, but it's kind of how we think about it in our industry. So we knew that there was going to be gold in the hedge fund. There wasn't going to be silver. So Casper's had this like other pool of capital that was available to buy silver. And I remember having this conversation with, Jason's dad, and here I am in Argentina. They've never met me in person.
Well, and Jason is part of an old family company, right?
Yeah, so
that's
Casper Companies is now a 125-year-old family conglomerate, 5th generation. They invented the shopping cart. They built their whole business in like the 1960s, 70s, 80s doing newspaper racks. 90% of all newspaper racks. A newspaper, Evan, is a daily journal that would
I'm
come
learning
out.
about newspapers and faxes
Right.
and all this kind of stuff.
So yeah, and then when that business died, they bought a company called Ranch Hand, which they built up. And if you're in Texas, you know Ranch Hand. They make the grill guards in the front of pickup trucks. It's a business that we later sold. But they're just a very entrepreneurial family.
Yeah.
And so they had this pool of capital, and I remember having this conversation. I'm in Argentina, they're in Texas, convincing Jason's dad that, he needs to wire me $1.5 million so we can go out and buy 50,000 silver maples to have
He's
have
never
some
met
silver.
you.
Never met
Some
me.
random dude in Argentina. Hey, just send the wire over.
And if you know anything about the Caspers, who are super conservative, this is just not what they do.
I honestly cannot believe that you got them to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I just hit it off with his dad. Like we're again, it's like what we were talking yesterday with Tom Power. It's you do business with the right people, with the right values, the right morals, and you can tell pretty quickly.
Things align.
Yeah, who's legit and who isn't. And so we buy the silver, and I say, oftentimes it's better to be lucky than good. We decided to name the company Texas Precious Metals, and people ask me that all the time, like, why did you name the company Texas Precious Metals? And my thinking at the time was the biggest challenge in the metals business is to build credibility. And Texas has a brand unto itself, and people understand Texas values. And there was a little piece of me that I think kind of modeled the name of the company off of Texas Instruments. So if you look at our logo, the logo of Texas Precious Metals is not that dissimilar to Texas Instruments.
Yeah.
And so that's what we launched. We launched February 4th, 2011. I say it's better to be lucky than good. That was the moment when gold and silver skyrocketed in price, and we were kind of the only game in town. Why were we the only game in town? Because we were the only precious metals company that had metal and no customers. So we leveraged this platform, Gold Shark, that I had built to get the brand out there. We started generating customers, and then we find ourselves in 2012 in the middle of the Eagleford Shale, the big fracking boom, and all of these South Texans were getting mailbox money, looking to put mailbox money into metals, and that slowly started building the brand and building the credibility.
You're selling all this online, almost like e-commerce wise.
It's all e-commerce, and Jason and his mom are doing the packing and the shipping out of Texas.
Physically in Shiner, Texas.
And I'm with my crew of my motley crew of expats in Bariloche doing all of the digital stuff behind the scenes. And so by 2012, the Caspers were like, listen, man, this thing is taking off. You need to move back to Texas. And this was, again, a big fork in the road for me. I'm like, I'm in my paradise. I got rainbows and butterflies and flowers. And, I'm finally learning Spanish. I feel like I can, have dinner and speak Spanish for 4 hours, right? And horribly broken Spanish. But I prayed about it. I thought about it. And it was the right time. It was the right company. And I always thought that I was going to move back to Argentina. So we ended up leaving a lot of our stuff down there and just, again, put all of our stuff into a suitcase and moved to Shiner, Texas.
Yeah.
Town of 2,000 people.
Shiner Bach.
You could not pick two geographic locations more different than the mountains and glacial lakes of Bariloche, Argentina, to the flat
South Central Texas.
South Central Texas, where everything wants to kill you. You know, the sandburs and the brown recluses and the copperheads and the rattlesnakes and, you know, the fire ants. And again, it was crazy hot. It actually reminded me a lot of Paraguay. And so we moved back to Shiner, Texas, and the company just, you know, builds on itself. We keep growing, and everything that we focus on is about brand reputation. And I had told you about all the shipping issues that we had, so we partnered with UPS to like reinvent shipping in our industry, where we could start overnighting heavy packages of silver, 40-pound packages that cost $30,000 to Maine, and be able to do that affordably and to ship for free. So we're helping. We're part of a group of companies, the JM Bullions, the SD Bullions, the you know, at the time Provident Metals. This online crew of young guys are coming into the space to really bring it into the 21st century. And so now we're able to insure packages up to $75,000 and get packages to people on time. And we really came to market and said, look, if we don't have a product in stock, we're not going to sell it. We never sold product. We said we do business the Texas way. We were focused on customer service. Everything was about taking care of the customer and trying to recalibrate or reposition people's expectations of what they were experiencing with a precious metals company. And, you know, we kept growing and growing, but we were a little bit under the radar. We were geographically heavy in Texas, so half of our client base was in Texas and half was in the rest of the U.S. We were not like SEO kings, so you know when you Googled us, you didn't find us, but our customer service and our reputation was second to none, and our brand equity was outstanding, and we were one of those companies that just kind of kept building year over year over year. And I'll get into the TPM story a little bit more, but I think the shift into Shiner for me was also a big life change, because I told you when I was in Paraguay, I felt like I had no skills. And then I moved to Shiner, and you got all of these country boys. And these country boys, man, they could go out, they could, you know, shoot a deer, skin it, eat it for dinner. They were fishing, you know.
They can dance too.
They can dance.
Oh my
like
goodness,
they
can dance.
And they can throw back some beer.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but these guys all had all of the life skills that I actually didn't have. They could plumb. They're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go fix the truck. You know, I never had a riding lawnmower in my life. I bought a riding lawnmower. I'm like reading the manual. How do you change the oil on a riding lawnmower?
That's how they all feel about me. They all went to A&M. I went to UT. So
That's
they
right.
all, you know, they all think that I'm exactly like that, which I 100% am. But I'm learning slowly but surely. You know, gonna be able to change the oil soon.
I bought a hammer, a screwdriver, and it's really kind of funny. I mean, because over the 7 years I lived in Shiner, it was, you know, I was learning woodworking and getting really into a lot. I joke like the man skills, right? Riding horses and going hunting and buying guns. I'd never shot a gun, you know, in my life.
Really? At that point, you had never shot a gun in your
the
life?
only people in Massachusetts that have guns are the criminals. So, you know, it's like, you know, coming to Texas, everybody has a gun. Your grandma has 3 guns. You know,
I mean,
it was.
she's going on a walk. You know, she's got one on her.
Exactly. So, so we keep building the brand. The thing that really changed our business was the depository. We were in the running for the Texas State Depository. So the state said, we're going to go and we're going to, you know, commission this depository to relocate our gold from New York, which was never going to happen. But we did not win that bid. But I spent 2.5 years building a whole business plan on how to build a world-class depository. And just like the e-commerce business in metals, there were a lot of gaps that needed to get fixed and corrected in this problem solving and critical thinking, and like how do we take this experience in the 21st century. The same is true with precious metals depositories. I mean, you know, the Brinks and the Loomises of the world, they're great at what they do. They're great at transport. They're good with sort of like commercial deposits, but for large quantity retail, IRAs, things of that nature, they're not really well suited or adapted to handling a large constituency of clients. And so in 2018, we launched the depository. It grew way faster than we expected.
Yeah.
We integrated a lot of technology with RFID and Bluetooth and barcoding and facial recognition, all these different things, the reporting that we could automatically feed to all of our institutional clients. And with the depository, the business grew from about 10 employees to today we have 77 employees in the organization, not counting all of the other people at Casper companies that touch our stuff. And as the depository continued to grow, we built this purpose-built facility in Shiner, and it's
some infrastructure.
It's been quite the journey. So yeah.
Yeah, and so when we're talking about the depository, kind of going back to you did it slow, you did it methodical. The search engine optimization was not key point number one, but it was the personable relationships. It was the partnerships, thinking kind of in that slow man kind of wins the race in the long run.
So yeah, just on that, what we talk a lot about, and we even, I know that you're new to the company here, but, as we have these internal discussions, it's outside in thinking. A lot of times companies fall into this trap of, this is the way that we want to do business, and we're going to force the customer to do it our way, instead of this outside in thinking, what is the easiest for the customer, and then let's adapt how we do business to make it as appealing for them as possible. You've heard of the golden rule, treat others how you would want to be treated. And we have the platinum rule, which is treat others how they want to be treated. And that was always the prevailing focus for us, is let's just focus on customer experience, and the rest will follow. The word of mouth will follow. The marketing will follow from there.
And so let's go to today. I know for me, when I was recruiting full-time, Shiner, Texas was not on the list of where I thought I was going to go. But I was able to tour the depository kind of, on a whim. I met Jason Casper through a professor at the University of Texas, and he invited me out, and they showed me around, and they were so hospitable to me, and in no way did I ever think I was going to work there. But the infrastructure and the technology and the care, the way that y'all handle metals was, I remember saying it at the time. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I get to go to work there now, and it still probably is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And we get to take people on tours, and the sparkle in their eye of the organization, how much it makes sense, just the size of the depository. And so today you have the infrastructure, right? You built slowly, you have the infrastructure, you have the team, but it's not corporate in a sense of, now we're standing still, we've done it, let's pat ourselves on the back and go sit down. You're running full steam ahead. Spending the last couple of days with you, a visionary of all visionaries, and have so many different ideas. So now that you kind of have this backing, now that you have this foundation, where is TPM going?
Yeah, so I think it starts obviously with the people, and just thinking about Shiner, Texas, and the advantages and disadvantages of being in Shiner. What are the advantages? The employees that we hire are, of the highest caliber, salt of the earth, great people.
Amazing people.
Their families have lived in Shiner for generations, and unbelievably hard workers. They are passionate about the community, just very moral and good and quality folks. So we have that as the stable. And once they work for you, they tend to work for you for a long time, because there's not a lot of other companies in Shiner, Texas. The challenge is, when you spend your whole life in Shiner, you don't necessarily see what is happening out in the rest of the world, and bridging the gap between what is traditionally a very blue-collar town, and we are a white-collar business.
Absolutely.
Trying to merge those two together, and you're right, it's hard to recruit. So our whole digital products team is in College Station, because we are able to hire there and bring some of the great young talent that's coming out of school to build the digital infrastructure.
Get the next satellite office in Austin.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
there you go.
yeah, everything is on the table as
There
it
we
goes.
go.
But I think, as we look out into the future, it is number one, building a bench, building a high quality stable of employees that understand our culture, because one of the biggest challenges of going from 10 people to 77 is ensuring that you don't lose the culture that got you to where you are. I don't want to be AT&T where you're punching numbers into a phone and you got to wait on hold for half an hour, and you're lucky if you can get a person in the United States who cares at all about what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
Like, we want to maintain the small town touch and the client relationship no matter how big we get. So, I think that's the foundation. And we are focused, everything that we do down the road is built on the customer. What can we do to improve the customer experience? And the customer is very different. So we might have retail customers, little grandma that's buying 5 coins for Johnny at Christmas. And we have large institutional clients, RIAs, IRA custodians, retirement funds, hedge funds, family offices. All of those customers have different needs. And so, again, this kind of goes back to this theme of, rather than forcing them to hook into the way that we do things, we want to try to create as many bespoke services to adapt to these clients, to allow them to do what they want to do, to be innovative and forward-thinking. So that flexibility and that adaptability is native to the infrastructure that we're building. We don't want to be rigid. We want to be as flexible as we can to move into all of these different verticals.
Yeah, and I think in that, the one thing that I've experienced is with kind of, you're not a expense sparing person, right? When it comes to insurance, when it comes to not having an AI or a computer answer the phone, I mean, you want to invest in the insurance, right? You're begging them, give me more insurance, right? I want, my customers to feel comfortable in the depository. I want people to have somebody who's kind answer the phone, an actual human being. And you're not looking to save 10 cents here and save 10 cents there. And it's something that I admire, and I think has been
This
a big
is the part of the podcast where we don't want the Caspers listening in. Right?
Yeah.
No, it's sort of a running joke in that, I stand by the model that price is what you pay, value is what you get.
Yeah.
And so I never want to spend wastefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about putting money to the highest and best use. And AI is a great example of this. We are using AI at our company. We are using it to improve the quality of our customer service, just analysis. We're using it to help us determine better and more efficient ways of handling metal in the depository. We're using it to help write content and to improve our website. But AI is a tool, and it reminds me of sort of the transition from the old school hand saws to chainsaws. Chainsaws revolutionized the forestation business.
Yeah.
But it still requires a human being to run the chainsaw and to be smart about how it's being used. And, those are the kind of things where, I feel like the personal touch and investing in the people, and maybe not cutting corners here, but allowing our customers to have that bespoke service in the long run is the wisest use of capital, and not throwing money away into areas that are not enhancing the customer experience.
Yeah.
So that's, I think when you ask that question, what you're saying is, how do I determine capital allocation in the organization? And capital allocation follows the same philosophy as our roadmap or our strategic initiative, which capital allocation starts with the customer and then it works its way backwards. What money am I spending? The money that I'm spending, is this going to enhance the customer experience?
If not, why am I spending it?
If not, why am I spending it?
And so you have the infrastructure, you have the security and the technology and the vaults and the depository and the trading desk. Where are we going? What are we doing? And
Yeah,
then
I mean,
we have
it's-
Y'all Street too. I mean, what is the future?
I think for the first time in a long time, so we've had very explosive growth. Our industry, let's rewind the tape a little bit. So we launched the company in 2011. In hindsight, we look back, if you're looking at a chart, precious metals went into this like 10-year bottoming pattern. Call it a consolidation, call it a pullback, a depression, whatever you want to call it. Gold and silver from 2001 to 2011 went on this meteoric exponential rise, and then you had a decade of basically flat growth in price. And for a lot of precious metals companies, particularly during the first term of when Trump was elected the first time in 2017, 2018, 2019, it was dead in precious metals. Money was flowing into Bitcoin, it was flowing into real estate, it was flowing into equities, and it was tough to survive. And then COVID hit, and then it was like we just started a whole new super cycle in precious metals. And our growth in 2023, I think we grew 500%. And,
Wow.
And the challenge of hiring and sustaining quality service during explosive growth and the change management associated with that, plus we were building the new depository, plus we were opening up new verticals within the organization, it was a real challenge. And so we expended all of our energy inwardly to make sure that our operations and our foundation and our infrastructure was exactly where we wanted it to be. So now I think as we go forward, we're at a point where we're going to start bringing the brand to the market. And we've just done a big partnership with Pro Rodeo. And people say, well, why are you doing Pro Rodeo? What does Texas Precious Metals have to do with the rodeo market? Well, first of all, our brand identity is quintessentially Texan. We've always focused on the cowboy. Our Texas Mint products are very, very much cowboy themed. Our people, our employees, a lot of our employees are involved in rodeo.
100%, yeah.
And there's been no precious metals company connected to rodeo in 40 years. So for us, it's blue ocean. It's communicating to a new demographic or a new constituency that we're here. And if you're interested, take a look at our business.
Plus, rodeo is really cool.
And it's really cool.
It's really cool.
And it's actually, besides the Yellowstone effect of rodeo, social media has completely transformed rodeo because it's bringing rodeo to the mass market, whereas before it was very rare that you would have the opportunity to actually watch rodeo on television. So, that's an area that we're exploring. We're going to start generating a lot more content like this podcast. What is Y'all Street? Y'all Street is not a term that we came up with. It refers sort of to the Texas Triangle, that Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Houston triangle, which is now, I think it's the 8th largest economy in the world.
It's getting big.
And you have technology in Austin, you have the oil and gas in Houston, you have all the hedge funds in Dallas. We're sitting there at the kind of the bottom of the triangle, this unique precious metals business. And we love the name. And I think why I embrace the term Y'all Street is because one of the things that I think has been really unique about living in Texas is that, you'll have this Houston executive who's wearing a suit jacket Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends he's going to the ranch, and he's hunting and he's fishing, and if he's running cattle, this happens all the time. A lot of our customers are businessmen by day, rancher by night, and exploring the delta between those two lifestyles and everything in between, from athletes and those in entertainment business and manufacturing business, exploring the world of finance. It's all interesting to me. And I think those are the themes that we're going to explore on Y'all Street and try to understand what motivates people, lessons for success in life and in business. And I think that's where we're going. We want to bring this to our client base. We're going to continue growing the depository. We're in the process now of really working more closely with larger and larger institutional clients. When you think about the strata of the precious metals world, you start at the very bottom, you have local mom and pop coin shops, and then you have like the retail guys, and then you start getting into the IRAs, and then there are distributors and depositories, and you start getting into the banking world where you're starting to trade in large form factor bank bars, and the institutional clients that instead of having a transaction for $5,000, it's now $50 million. And we continue to grow and elevate, and we're becoming creating more of a domestic footprint and now a worldwide footprint. We're opening up a satellite depository in Switzerland, one in Cayman Islands. We have on the roadmap a facility in Singapore to allow for some geographic diversification. So I see us continuing to expand our product offering and make it so that we can be a one-stop shop for people, whether they're looking for collectibles, retirement, speculation, you name it, we become the place to go.
And you really have done a good job of representing Texas, I think, in a lot of ways too. And I think people outside of Texas respect Texas in a lot of ways.
Oh, you see that when you travel all over Europe, right?
Absolutely.
And again, Texas is a brand unto itself. I think Texas precious metals is more impactful than Iowa precious metals, or
with all due respect to Iowa.
And I love Iowa.
We love Iowa.
We have a lot of customers in Iowa.
We love Iowa.
But just the brand equity of Texas and how closely it is aligned with Americana, how closely the American cowboy, and we were talking to Cody Webster about the emblem of the American cowboy and what that represents and who that represents as it relates to manhood, as it relates to loving God, country, family, rugged independence, a general sense of doing business in a certain way, the American values. I still think it's fascinating when we go to National Finals Rodeo, and you have 18,000 people in this stadium for 10 consecutive nights, and then they open up the entire event with a prayer.
It's amazing.
That is quintessentially cowboy.
Yeah.
And it's an ethos that basically says, we don't care what you think about us. This is who we are, and embracing that culture. And, I've always said, our name is Texas Precious Metals. I don't want to sell the precious metals. I want to sell the Texas.
Yeah.
Why? Because I don't want to be in the decision-making process of trying to convince someone to buy precious metals. What I want to convince them to do is once they know they want to buy precious metals, I want to convince them to buy from us because we're reputable, we have great prices, we're transparent, and we do business the Texas way.
Absolutely. And Y'all Street, you talked about it a little bit, but it's not all Texas precious metals themed. You have something bigger for Y'all Street. You have a bigger view for Y'all Street, for the content and the podcast that's coming out for Y'all Street. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, certainly there's an overlap where, precious metals is going to factor in heavily in any finance conversation that we have. And there's
especially today.
And you just recorded some videos on like an introduction to precious metals and things of that nature. So there'll be some of that content on there, no doubt, but it's going to be a small part of that Venn diagram. I'm just more interested in having great conversations with great people that provide value to our customer base and give them a reason to keep kind of coming back and developing more of a relationship with us as a company that is maybe disconnected from just the transactional portion, right? It's tough when you're a business because oftentimes the relationship that you're building is transactional only. Like it's call me when you need me, we'll sell the metals and you buy it from us and then we won't talk to you again. And I want to get away from that. I want people to know us, to develop this relationship, to feel like they can communicate with us, to feel like we're in this journey of life together. We've spent this whole podcast talking about my journey, and I'm interested in other people's journeys.
Yeah. And you have a lot of cool people coming on, and like Cody Webster, very cool guy. Does amazing
We have a great
stuff.
lineup of guests coming.
An amazing lineup. So
coming down the road.
We are very excited. So,
and I'm going to try to get you on some of these podcasts as well, and bring your perspective, being a little bit younger and
a little bit. Just a little bit.
Significantly younger. There'll come a time where you'll be doing probably more of this. So
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate this very
Well,
much.
The host of Y'all Street, Tarek Saab.
Thank you, Evan.